So my name is George Holm, as I've been introduced as, and this is my class on design thinking in business for this week. Right, so we'll go through a little bit about what we're going to talk about for the next hour. So first, I guess we already went through it, but brief introduction about me. Then we're going to talk about what is design thinking. For the most part, for this class, we'll be talking about the double diamond model, which is one of the models that is a good method to use when going over design thinking. So there's some 4 phases to that: discover, define, develop, deliver. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Then we'll talk about the pros and cons of the double diamond model, some alternative methods, because there are a lot of different ways to think about design thinking. So it's good to open your mind to all of them. Generally, they're all like relatively similar, and the steps that you're going to go about is going to follow the same kind of format, but being able to like talk about different methods can just showcase what's important to know and to think about when we're doing design thinking. And then in the end, we can go over any questions if anybody has that. So yeah, I guess again, a little bit about me. I'm a rising junior at Yale. I study computer science and mathematics, so that's where like my main area of expertise is. So like whenever I'm talking about this sort of stuff like design thinking in business, I personally relate it best when I bring it back to the topic of computer science or the things that I do with my projects or with my work at Meta. But obviously the things that I'm trying to talk about, I want you to be able to apply to any field that you are interested in entering. As like you enter your college careers, you're going to be going into a lot of different areas, some business related, and not all of them are going to be software engineering. So I think the main idea is just talking about the lessons that I've learned from software engineering, and being able to apply that to any other area is probably like the most important thing about like what I talk about during this hour. Yeah, and again, I work as a teaching assistant for computer science class. I have experience leading clubs at Yale and starting clubs at Yale as well. So if anybody has any questions afterwards, you can email me, ask me during the presentation. I'd be happy to answer anything about any of that sort of stuff. So yeah, so I guess first we can get started with what is design thinking. So design thinking is meant to be like a business-centered human approach to innovation and problem solving. So it focuses on the needs and experiences of like actual users, trying to create solutions that are both effective, user-friendly. So the process involves empathizing, it's a hard word to say, with users, trying to define the problem, ideating potential solutions, prototyping, and testing these solutions. So it's kind of a very vague way of saying it's a very like hands-on, human-focused way of doing problem solving. And in school, you've probably done a lot of different ways of tackling problem solving throughout your time. And I hope to help give you maybe some clarity on that, or some better ways in the future to help like isolate that in sort of a business approach. So generally by prioritizing empathy and creativity, design thinking helps businesses develop these innovative products and services or whatever they need, strategies to help actually meet the real needs of their customers. Because oftentimes you see in businesses that whatever strategies that they went about making their business doesn't actually help the end user that much. So the goal of this is to try to give you like a competitive advantage over other people who are in the field. So generally, we think of design in a few different orders as well. I'll go over before we talk about traditional design. There's first order and second order types, which is generally where traditional design tends to flourish. So the first order is like graphic design and visual representation, and the second order we have industrial design, so like simple mobile apps and physical solutions. Where design thinking and business needs generally happens in third and fourth order problems. So these are more complex. Third and fourth order problems are like experimental and strategic design. And then we have like services with like complex issues where you have to like understand customers, partners, businesses, and like competition and like your position in the market. So it's not just like designing something visually, but it's about actually interacting with like a complex like market space, which is kind of like the $1 million question. So some of the pitfalls with traditional design is that it tends to stick in their fixed ways. So what I mean by that is like small incremental changes to business strategy based off of like, you know, like surveying customer data, compiling it, strategizing it, just trying to move your business in a very slow and safe way, or move whatever product you're trying to make slow and safe changes. Generally in this situation, you're unable to embrace change, which is not great in a world where change is ever accelerating. So like you always see every single day, there's like a new technology that's like supposed to change the world. And, eventually uh, like change is happening a lot faster than it used to. So generally traditional design strategies, you don't have enough time to spend years trying to like make small changes. And generally with traditional design strategies, it's like there's a lot of documentation that goes on. There's a lot of like overhead and process and people you have to go through just to get anything changed. So it's actually very expensive to do very small changes, which is risky because when you make changes generally in this sort of strategy, they're more permanent and hard to undo. And there's a lot of like financial risk that actually goes with this sort of thing. So generally when we're thinking about a design thinking mindset is trying to focus on the needs of the customers, like acting quickly, as we said earlier. And in general, this is going to look like small investments that either fail quickly and move on, or actually create big growth in the company or whatever product you're talking about. So this is like a very crucial part. So when I talk about these, like the methods that we go about these sort of things, these processes should not take that long, relatively speaking, compared to what you might think for like a product timeline, which would be like maybe a year or something. Like these sort of changes with design thinking should go by in like either like days, weeks, like maybe a month at the latest. So and that way you can get real user feedback really quickly, and you can know if something fails, you can move on, and there's no problem with that. Failure is a part of the design process, and that's essentially expected. Um, but if it doesn't fail and it has a good impact, then you'll be able to know that right away, which is great. So uh, I would like to give like a good example of what like a better design thinking practice would be compared to traditional. And that would be like, imagine you had a software engineering social media. Now, like a company with a good design mindset might want to make changes that positively impact the company quickly, because social media is a competitive space. You're trying to grab user attention. When you lose it, that's bad. It's bad for money, bad for the customers. I would know about that working Meta. So let's say that there was the company wanted to make a user design change that moves around the locations of the buttons. Like think about TikTok or Reels or any sort of scrolling platform they use, maybe YouTube Shorts. Um, Now, maybe a good strategy for design testing would be to do A/B testing, where for maybe half your users, you give one format of the user design, and the other half of the users, you give a different format. Then you get really quick testing data on to see how long people use the website or app or keep scrolling, and you see, okay, which one performed better, which one allowed our customers to stay on the app, allowed for more quick click-through rates, and like watch time. So in the result, you could see, okay, was the change good? Did it improve things? Yes or no? Did it not? Yes or no? And then you can make the switch. And if not, then you move it back. I mean, there's very little harm in that. So in that sort of sense, you have a very quick, easy way to make change in a company, where uh, like a traditional way of doing it might be like planning it out, doing a bunch of overhead, having a bunch of surveys of potential ways to improve the user design, and then maybe the process takes like a couple months, and then you commit to it, and you push it to production, and then you just like you wasted all that time when it would have been easier just to test it for a little bit and see if it works. So that's just a little example for how this sort of method can save time in like social media sense. Now we're actually going to talk about the double diamond model, which is, I guess you could call it the main topic of design thinking for today, even though this is obviously not the only way to visualize design thinking. Sometimes it can just be helpful to have these sort of strategies to fall back on. So this was developed by the UK Design Council back in 2005. And it's a problem space where designers explore the problem, including its complex nature, and end with like a clear definition of the problem. So that's the problem space, which is like this first half. And then it's where the majority of like the unique design characteristics and like the value lay, including like all the creativity and the uncertainty of everything. And then in this like second stage here, we have the solution space where the ideas are actually generated, visualized, and like prototyped and tested. And like in the end of this, we have a final, the product page is delivered to the user. So we're going to kind of go through each of the steps, and you'll see the discover stage is kind of you can imagine as kind of a divergent step. Define stage is convergent. Developing, again, divergent. Delivering is convergent. So that's why it's called the double diamond model. And again, there are lots of different models out there. This is just the one that I thought was like the best for visualization and leads into a lot of really the core ideas behind design thinking. So yeah, those are the two phases. We have the problem space and the solution space. It'd be good to keep that in mind, like as we go forward. All right, cool. So first, we can talk about the discover phase. So that's that first rising side of the double diamond model. This is where a lot of the research happens. So we have user research, market analysis, like problem identification, and then again, this is like the divergent phase where you're kind of branching out into a bunch of different spaces, trying a bunch of different things and seeing what sticks and what works and what's the best for you guys. So as the first stage, it's like kind of the exploration step. So teams try to explore problems or test or target project, such as like finding the root cause of the problem and applying like field research to undergo to understand the actual target challenge. So again, the target of this step is to examine and collect information about like whatever challenge that you're designing. So there's a lot of different ways that this can happen. And so some of the big strategies that work with discovering and like actually doing research, which is arguably the most important part of your project. You don't want to mess this up because this is where you're actually kind of gathering all the necessary information. You don't want to leave anything unattended. So I can go over some strategies, and I have a quick video right here that will help with this sort of thing. So mind maps is a really good one. So this is like a tool that's used to explore different ideas about a core problem. The way you do it, you have like the main topic is written in the center of the board, and then it's expanded and connected. It's really good with a team building exercise if you're trying to work with a team to get all on the same page about what you're trying to accomplish. So you can draw it on paper or whiteboards or whatever. You can use online mind mapping tools. You've probably done this in school at some point. It's kind of interesting. A lot of the things that you do in school you don't really think about can actually be applied to like actual business. So it gives some credibility if some of y'all are disenchanted with the education system. There are some actual valuable things that you may learn with there. And mind maps are very good ways to discover and like kind of brainstorm kind of topics and questions like that. Another good technique would be multi-perspective problem framing. So the MPF or MPPF for short, yeah. So this was created by doctors Stuart English in this School of Design in Northumbria University. So this method is actually based off of a problem solution framing that we kind of talked about earlier. So the process based off of like integrated mind maps where there's like 6 cornerstones to explore and understand the problem. Again, you could probably like look into whatever to this technique more if you want to. It's kind of a lot to go into right now, but I'm just kind of putting it out there as a good option for you to look into if you're trying to discover something. So MPPF, that's a really good one. Obviously, we have brainstorming, which is generally like everyone sits in a room, we talk about ideas and we talk about potential problems or solutions and such and such. Um, but I guess less common to talk about would be reverse brainstorming. And this one was actually new to me when I was doing research. And I found this really good video that goes into reverse brainstorming and what that sort of thing is, which is a good thing to try when basically none of this stuff works and you're still stuck you're in a creative rut. So let's watch this video and I'll have somebody tell me if you can actually hear it.
Is your team falling short of creating ideas? Is it unable to brainstorm new and innovative ways to solve complex problems?
Thumbs up.
Well, if that's the case, in this video, I'll show you how you can help your team get out of this creative rut and unlock its creativity almost instantly. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, my name is Vibor. I am an executive agile and leadership coach based in Toronto, Canada, and on this channel we explore the tools and strategies that help us be more agile, not only at work or in our careers, but life as a whole in general. There are timestamps available in case you're watching this on YouTube, so feel free to skip on the video if you feel like it. But for now, let's get started. Brainstorming is a great way to gather new ideas and solve problems. It's easy to execute and usually generates a large number of useful, innovative ideas. Or at least, that's what we think. Whenever we feel a need to innovate or generate new ideas, we schedule a meeting, make the team sit in a circle, hand them post-it notes, and ask them to spill their brains and regurgitate a masterpiece. Something new and extraordinary that the world has never seen or heard of before. And don't get me wrong, you do get many different ideas, but those ideas are sometimes too broad and absurd and lack the specifics required to take the action. You get a lot of ideas, but most of the time, those are the ideas that you are not looking for. As marvelous as it is, brainstorming sometimes falls short when trying to solve complex organizational problems or impediments. We expect our teams to think out of the box without defining the box's dimension in the first place. So what can we do? How can we make our teams get out of this creative rut? Well, I'm happy to report that there is a solution. Sometimes to see a picture clearly, we need to turn that picture upside down. All it requires is a change in perspective. Where traditional brainstorming falls short, the right next step to solving a problem is to turn the problem on its head. And that's where the concept of reverse brainstorming comes into play. Reverse brainstorming, as the name suggests, flips traditional brainstorming techniques 180 degrees, allowing you to approach complex problems from an entirely different viewpoint. Where traditional brainstorming demands your team to focus on collecting ideas to solve a particular problem, in reverse brainstorming, the team instead looks at what could make the problem worse, or why the problem cannot be solved. We then reverse those ideas to discover new things we didn't see before, enabling ourselves to look at the problems, the cause, and the solution from completely different angles. Reverse brainstorming works best when the team with the new ideas in a short period of time, when they have expressed all their best ideas and have nothing more to add. It works best when the project itself has become so difficult and complex that it has sucked out all the team members' creative enthusiasm, turning them into naysayers. Reverse brainstorming can make use of this negative energy, turning the negative feelings and frustrations into resources that can be used to explore new and innovative opportunities for improvement. It works best when you want people to let go of their preconceived notions about a particular topic or subject. Reverse brainstorming can lead to some surprising out-of-the-box thinking or unexpected discoveries that can make a real and positive difference. It can literally force people to think differently, making them learn by imagining their failures. So, when you want your team to think out of the box and reveal hidden problems that are not visible in normal circumstances, use reverse brainstorming. Okay, so there are 5 steps to use reverse brainstorming. In step 1, we identify the problem. Just like the traditional brainstorming session, we first need a problem to solve. For example, in our case, let's take a generic increase sales in a store as a problem to solve. In step 2, we reverse the problem, and instead of avoiding it, we make it the goal or the vision that we want to achieve. For example, instead of asking a team to brainstorm how to increase sales, we ask them how to decrease sales. In step 3, we brainstorm ideas to achieve the reverse goal. For example, in our case, we let the team members come up with ways to decrease sales. And we welcome all ideas, no matter how outrageous they are. In step 4, we analyze all the generated ideas by asking whether the business is currently doing something similar to what is stated in the negative idea. For example, if one of the ideas to decrease sales is to leave the store unstaffed, then we need to consider if in fact we do leave the store unstaffed on occasions for various reasons. Or maybe there is a lack of staff in the store to attend to all the customers. You'll be surprised by the kind of problems you can uncover in this phase of reverse brainstorming. The fifth and the final step is to evaluate the selected ideas and identify the solution for the problems identified in step number 4. We use creative and analytical methods to identify ways of preventing those problems. For example, one of the solutions could be hiring more staff. Or, even better, letting only a certain number of customers enter the store at a given point in time, making a queue outside the store. This will not only solve our problem, but will also serve as a wonderful marketing strategy, showing the demand for the store items to the public passing by. Reverse brainstorming is a great tool that can energize a weak brainstorming session and engage participants who feel disempowered or disconnected from the process. It can also be a good way to help your team members step back from the day-to-day experiences and see the process, product, or service from a new and different point of view. So there you have it. Reverse brainstorming is really useful and effective. It is a powerful tool, but an untrained, less experienced team can easily get off track while using it. It can take longer than a typical brainstorming exercise, and participants may have difficulty flipping negative comments to find positive solutions. For these reasons, I advise you to run reverse brainstorming sessions with the help of a seasoned facilitator.
There you go. So I thought reverse brainstorming was sort of an interesting newer technique that I had never heard of before, and I'd never seen used in like when I was in school or in any sort of like team building exercise or whatever. So I just thought that it would be really good thing to explain to you guys. There's a lot of other things that you could go over when you're talking about like discovery techniques. Not all of it's just brainstorming together. This is the place where you should also be doing desk research. So that's probably like even before brainstorming, this would be a good thing like for everyone in your team to be kind of searching on the internet. So like reviewing existing publications or like resources about the topic, whatever the problem is, to try to expand your knowledge, which would be a good thing to go through before doing any brainstorming, because then you'll go into the conversation, everyone having their own different area of research that they kind of explored, and bring it all together so that everyone's on the same page. Another thing you can do is do field research, which there's a lot of different methods that can be used to explore this sort of thing. So instead of just like searching on the internet or searching through a library, this is things like interviews, focus groups, and like just observation in real life. So with interviews, you can just hold online or face-to-face meetings with like target people, or like people that you're trying to sell to, or your goal is to get involved with your product. So this can be either a structured or semi-structured or unstructured, like whatever you want, based on like whatever's like what kind of questions you're asking. So semi-structured would kind of involve having predefined questions, but you could extend those questions based off of the discussion with the person for more information. Unstructured, obviously, is just you kind of go into the interview with nothing particularly in mind, just trying to find out more about the person. And then structured is maybe more of a kind of a survey, just like a one-on-one survey with them, where you kind of like stay stuck with your questions. You can also go into focus groups. So this is similar to interviews, but it's kind of a group discussion rather than one-on-one. So it can be a lot cheaper and easier than interviews, because you can do basically 1/6 of the effort for the same amount of people talked to. But there's some drawbacks to it, because people can be influenced by each other's ideas. I know everyone's had that feeling where you're in a group discussion, you don't want to kind of give the differing opinion because you're not necessarily afraid of like showing a different opinion, but you're like, I don't need to do that, you know? So it can be not the best way of getting people to like give out their own specific unique ideas. But it can give you a good sense of generally where the most people are at. And then for observation, like for me, this is kind of like the core practice of any sort of like field research. So this is just kind of like observing people in their lives, like seeing how they interact with like the problem, and then you just like documenting this sort of stuff. So like for me, when I'm on a college campus, like you can just observe the people around you, and if there's a problem that you see and you see other people experience it, or you just hear about it over time, you kind of build these observations over time, and you're going to go into this project with a lot of observations already and things in mind, but it's good to go out there and just get a little bit more out of it. All right, so that's enough of the discover phase. There we go. Now we can talk about the define phase. So this is where you're actually synthesizing your research. You're coming up with the problem statement. You're coming up with the design brief. This is, again, where the previous step was more divergent. This is more convergent. So we're kind of bringing it, everything that we explored, we pushed everything out there. We're bringing it back together for the define phase. So this is the part of the problem space that allows ideas to be narrowed into the clear definition of the problem. So leads you into prototyping and like the following testing steps. And then, so again, we're filtering out the ideas, and we're filtering out the things that we came up with in the previous step to try to reach like a really workable, clear brief. So there's a lot of things that come along with the define phase as well. So there's root cause analysis is generally like the most common part of this. So after collecting sufficient information about problems, you can analyze the data to understand the actual cause. So this is like the root problem to find a sustainable solution. So this tool like generally aims to like investigate 6 common big areas that can be found in the root cause of any sort of problem. If you're talking about like if you already have a product, you already have a team, and there's a problem that's going on, you're trying to find the cause of it. All right. So these 6 areas, we got method, measure, people, material, environmental, and machine. And there's a few things that can come along with any of them. So these are just like, it's a quick go-to to figure out, okay, what's the problem that's going on? So I'll actually give you guys a question right now. So be prepared to answer something. I'll wait for a response. So try to find the root cause of this problem. So a manufacturing company produces electronic. Recently, they noticed a significant increase in the number of defective units returned by customers. The defects are causing a high return rate, impacting customer satisfaction and increasing costs due to rework and replacements. What could be some of the root causes of this problem? So I'm just asking this to any of you guys. So anybody can unmute and answer and give me a couple potential root causes of that.
Yeah, so maybe the products might have been mass produced most likely, so they should probably check if they ever, because since it's a company, they probably open a lot of new factories. Let's go by it being, commercial. So maybe one of the newer factories, the way they're actually building the product itself is wrong, and that is causing a lot of people. A way you could see this is if people in a certain area are having this problem, and then you could find the factory that actually makes and like disposes of the product in that area.
Yeah, that was really good, Wanya. So this is that her solution involves kind of, I guess this is 3 different like areas of the root cause. She talked about the people, so there's like potentially different people who are involved in this sort of thing. The machines, the factories that are not potentially working, or the materials that go into them could be wrong. So that was a very good way and a very good analysis of the question. Thank you. That was great. So there are other the ways to define the problem, and there's another good way is the 5 whys. So you just ask why basically 5 times until you reach the root cause of the problem, in the sense that it becomes the main like cornerstone of like the problem. You can kind of imagine this method as like if you've ever seen like a 2-year-old and like they ask you a question about something and you're like, oh, it's because this, and then they're confused by that, so they ask why, and then no matter what you say, they just keep asking why. I know I did this when I was really young, and I have like my little sister, and when she was a little baby, she would just like ask why for everything constantly, and it can get a little annoying sometimes, but it's really cute to see that like they have like a intellectual curiosity or some sort of nature of that stuff. But this strategy kind of follows the same route, is that you can get to the root cause of something if you just ask why something happened 5 times. And in general, by the time you've you've asked why 5 times, you might be either repeating yourself or you've said, okay, so this is like the real reason that's at the bottom of everything. And then another super important technique that's actually used in software engineering, like particularly at Meta with their interns and with their actual products, is user stories. So this is super common. And what user stories, if you don't know what these are, is it's using like user experience research, and it reflects the type of target user, the user's practice, and like his or her final goal. So like the kind of format goes is like as, and then insert description of the user. I want to like do a function, and then so that I can receive the benefit from it. So when creating or when designing or thinking about a product, it's actually really good to, if you're doing user stories, like come up with literally like 10 to 20 of these user stories. These are like, you're kind of creating different people for your product. Like you're imagining their life, you're imagining everything about them and why they want to use this product and why, or what kind of problem that they have solved. It's not even like, you don't even have a specific problem in mind or product in mind yet. You have a specific thing that they want to do. So this could be a small part of your product. In my personal experience, during my software engineering internship that I'm going through right now, a big part of it is create your own capstone project where you're mentored through for a few weeks with your manager. And so I'm spending like 6 weeks currently on this project. We're about halfway through right now. I finished most of the actual technical parts of the product, which is really good for me. I know a lot of interns actually haven't gone through that part yet, but the big part of the design process for when I've been working on my product, which is actually just like a fitness app, is coming with user stories. That was one of the big things that they had us do. So some of my user stories for a fitness app look like, actually, I might be able to pull like them up exactly real quick. Yeah. Hold on for 2 seconds. User stories. I totally have them. All right, nice. Yeah, so my app is a fitness app, and it's specifically it's tracking meals and tracking like exercise and workouts. So when I was creating my user stories, I had that in mind, and that's like, I like going to the gym. I'm like captain of the powerlifting team at Yale, so like I'm a big gym bro. I love fitness. I love all this like aspects of it, but I can't just like tailor the product to what I like specifically. So I had to create in my head some sort of like personas of people who like it. So I could give you an example or two. First, you actually create like kind of the user story, and then you can create personas for those user stories. So the user story is a little bit more vague. So I would say a power lifter is like a user who wants to keep track of detailed track of their lifting and track their progress so that they can use it to help like better their health or better their strength goals, right? So that would be a user story. So it's a quick sentence. Here's like a kind of person, here's what they want to do, and here's like why they want to use it. And then after that, actually, I created multiple personas. Be kind of embarrassing, but I could read one of them out. So like I literally crafted like this person out of thin air just to imagine them using my product. So I said, Samantha is a 21-year-old college student from New York who, after years of going to the gym, casually decided to take lifting seriously and go for strength. She's familiar with the technology and she likes tracking her progress. She wants to be able to use like whatever application multiple times per workout to log sets and reps as she lifts. Her motivation for using this app is it'll give her a better look at her progress, show her where her strengths and necessary improvements are, and easily build good workouts. A potential pain for her is that if it's too hard to open up quickly after a set, it might become annoying to use. So this helps give me, again, the idea of someone who might be using this app and like some of the things that they actually want to go for. So when I created this person, she just wants a really convenient way for her to open her phone or laptop really quickly or something, log down a few sets, close it, and have it open up again, and it'll still be on the same stuff. Everything will be quick. It'll, you don't want to have her like waiting around, especially when you're working out, if you know what that is. Like you're moving weights around and then you're kind of sitting down for a couple minutes. You have like 1 minute to get stuff done before you have to do your next set. So I've created like several of these, and then I created so many user stories. So this is probably for me in like this define phase is user stories have been like the most crucial and the most important. I found it's been the most helpful when I've creating what I actually wanted to do for my product, because when you have a really open-ended project, you don't actually necessarily know what are all the things that you want to implement. So my workout app, yeah, it's a workout app, but it has a ton of different features. You should be able to log in, log out, log workouts, log meals, track the data. What are the different types of data that you can track? Do you want to make it a social media? Do you want to be able to add your friends and see what the workouts that they've been doing? I'm implementing an AI chatbot as a personal trainer. Like, why am I doing that? Would anybody actually find that useful, or is that just like unnecessary and just kind of a waste of space? So those are the sort of things that user stories can help clarify. What are the actual important things about your product, and where are maybe the things that are either extraneous, extra, or a bit too much? All right. All right, so develop phase. Now we're actually creating something, which is, notice that like we spent most of the time talking about just like the planning stages, and there's a reason for that. Like when I was, again, during this internship, an entire week of my 10-week internship has been spent planning out my project for the next 6 weeks. So it's like you're spending a long time. The amount of time that you're spending planning can drastically impact how long it takes to develop something. So again, with developing, you're actually going to have some more brainstorming phases here. And the whole point of kind of design thinking in business is having an iterative mindset. So that's doing a lot of small things quickly, testing them, getting them figured out. For me specifically, the develop phase involves creating the minimum viable product. So you see this everywhere on the internet. You see it at Meta. This is basically, it's ubiquitous in all of tech if you're working here. So it's the MVP, minimum viable product. And kind of what that is like it's a limited version of the product with minimal features that actually make it workable so that users can actually test the product. So this is a good way for the team to evaluate the product service in a real life scenario. Then the team uses the feedback to improve the final complete round. So with the minimum viable product, generally you'll have like a list of features. There'll be like 6 or 7 things that you need to have in this product. You don't really care about the user design, but it's all about just like getting it out there and like hitting the ground running. So a couple weeks ago when I was doing one of these, I talked about Flickster, and I can show you that again. This is something we created and we had 1 week to do it, and we were given the minimum viable product. So for us, this is just a website where you can like look at it and it'll give you description and rating. So I created this over the course of like 4 days. Don't judge me too hard. This is my first time doing React and coding with this new programming language. So it was a fun, cool thing. But the minimum viable product was essentially you had this playlist area where it would showcase movies and stuff about them. And when you clicked on it, it would show a little bit more detailed information about the movie. So that was the minimum viable product. And then there are a bunch of extra things that I added once I was done with that. And I was confirmed you also need to have a search bar, right? Like inside out, you know. These are the sort of things like a load more button, like those, like you need all this in your minimum viable product. And I guess the point of all this is to say that like if you just have a bare bones solution first, like it didn't look like this in the end. And I'm not claiming to be some sort of user design expert. I'm certainly not. But there was definitely a lot worse when it was technically complete and I could start testing and showing it to people and stuff. And then I worked on it a lot afterwards to try to like fill in the specific things that could be worked on to make it better. And again, when talking about the minimum viable product with like my fitness app, what I created as that sort of thing is the ability to log in or log out, the ability to create, log, and edit workouts, the ability to create, log, and edit meals, and the ability to track that information in a visual sense. So that's essentially my minimum viable product. I also had created an AI chatbot in there. So I did confirm, I did commit to that. But those are the things that I have to get done by the end of the project. And then there's like 5 other things that I have as a part of my project that are more optional, and they're just called stretch goals. These are things that once you're done with the MVP, you can start working on them and seeing how they work when you implement them. Again, this is a good place where you can do your A/B testing. And a lot of this sort of thing kind of revolves around the idea that you're getting stuff done quickly. So rapid prototyping. If you're working in a larger team, rapid prototyping looks more like you're creating a feature like within a week, you test it and you see what happens. You know, I'm only one person, and when I'm working on this like big solo project, the whole point is that you can't really do total rapid prototyping. You kind of make one thing and you kind of edit it throughout the entire project. But when you are in a team setting and you're able to do a lot of work really, really quickly, then rapid prototyping can be a good way to see exactly what's going on. So you could think of also rapid prototyping in like maybe a physical product space. You could do like 3D printing to create a sample of the product and allow the team to actually like visualize and like see examples of the product or like different product ideas. So especially with like the rise in like technologies like that, it's a lot easier to right now to create rapid prototypes now than it was in the past. Like 100 years ago, there was no like, I mean, we just invented the assembly line, and that alone was not exactly a rapid prototyping thing. So this is sort of like a relatively new thing where you're kind of prototyping under the idea that you're going to waste maybe a little bit of resources, but it's going to save you a lot of time in the end. Another good thing you can do, storytelling, which is actually something you can do in both the discover and develop stages. So storytelling just like allows you to explore the prototypes and share their experiences as a story. So kind of similar to what I was talking about with like user roles and user experience and personas, you can maybe walk through whatever product you're creating and walk through the experience of using it. So what is it like turning it on? What is it like using it for the first time, for the second time, for the 10th time? And at what point do they get bored of it, throw it away, stop using it? Does it stop working? What are the issues that they have with it when they're using your product? So you're kind of putting yourself in the customer mindset, which is, again, this is a big part about design thinking in business, is trying to change your mind frame around sort of the customer and user experience. Cool. So now we can finally reach to the last phase of like the double diamond approach, which again, it doesn't actually matter the double diamond approach. There's a lot of different ways that you can visualize this sort of thing, but we're in the deliver phase. So this is where final testing, implementation, launch, and feedback. So for me, when I'm talking about the deliver phase for my project, I would be saying, okay, I've finished everything. Let's host it on a web service and get everything running and get everything synced. And then have my manager come and look at it. Have my manager's manager come and look at it. Have all my peer mentors. I have peer mentors that at Meta who are like their entire like role to me is just like to be there and help guide me and help, you know, be this sort of like feedback. And I do that, and I'm getting a lot of feedback constantly. Every single day, I'm getting a lot of feedback from my mentor, my managers, my peers about the product that I'm making. So this sort of thing kind of happens throughout the entire project, but this is the last convergent step when we're thinking, okay, this is the finalization of whatever product that we're creating. So some of the big things that we can do to get a lot of feedback is surveys. So we can, it's basically the most common tool for designers for web apps. It's very, very easy to make surveys. And marketers can also do this sort of thing. You just get feedback through like simple ratings or simple questionnaires to collect details about the user's comments or opinions about the product. And you could, again, if it's kind of a virtual application or a website, or if there's any sort of way to get yourself like involved in the web end of this, that makes surveys so much easier. You don't really want to send physical surveys. I've never done a physical survey in my life, and I don't think many of you guys have, but I've done a ton of online surveys. So I think that that's a lot easier if you're trying to do that sort of thing. You can also do think aloud. So in this tool, customer uses the product while describing the experience loudly. So it's kind of similar to that story we're doing, except now you actually have a customer here. So designers take notes or recording like the customer experience. And kind of you bring someone in, you have them use your product, and then they literally kind of describe what they're doing to you like out loud. So it's kind of a unique way of getting feedback post product delivery. Shadowing. So another really good tool would be shadowing. So it's where you have one design team following the user as a shadow and just taking notes as the user uses the product. So this is kind of like a more subtle way of doing it. Instead of a user just loudly explaining what's going on, then you have people just watching and observing. And yeah, so that's generally like kind of the delivery phase. So it's probably a lot quicker than actually creating it or planning it. You're just trying to get feedback, and this can go on for as like little or as long as is necessary. So again, there are a lot of pros and cons to the double diamond strategy. So the pros is that you have like immediately a structured approach to whatever you're doing. You get to focus on user needs, encourages creativity and innovation, and there's a lot less risk involved with this sort of thing, especially since a lot of the risk is short term. The biggest con to strategies like this and that are similar to this is that they can be kind of unrealistically linear. So what you're imagining is you're just kind of like, you have like this product ideation part and it comes together into this natural area where you're making a product, and then you push it out there and then it just works the first time and then it's gone. But that's not really what happens. And I know the idea of this is for it to be cyclical and for you to be able to go back to steps. So maybe a better way of thinking about the double diamond strategy or strategies like this in general is the ability to like go back to previous steps when necessary. Then I think that actually makes it a lot better. It kind of removes all of like the unnecessary linearness because the creation process is not linear. When I've had multiple times when, like even throughout the internship already, right? When I'm creating something and then I'm like technically finished with it, but then I just think that the way that I went about solving it is kind of complicated or maybe cumbersome. So maybe I just need to start fresh, and I reset back with the knowledge that I've already gained, and that can help kind of iterate through the design process. So again, making sure that your process is iterative. Don't be worried about scrapping whatever you've done and starting over again. That is part of it. So that is okay to do. Yeah, so I guess we can also talk about some other models. If that one wasn't quite up to your standard, you'll see that all of these models follow a similar approach. And then there's one of them that I think is really good, but we'll talk about that. So we also have the IDEOs, design thinking process. So these have the stages: emphasize, define, ideate, prototype, test. So very similar. So this focus is when you're, if you're trying to do kind of a more of a human-centered design, so the emphasis on empathy, say that 10 times fast, and iterative testing. So again, you can see that kind of similar to previously, we have a defined phase here. We have kind of an idea creation phase, kind of a building phase, they call it prototype, and then we have a testing phase. So this is kind of more like logically one step after the other. But we also have this like empathizing phase, which kind of, I guess, is supposed to relate you closer to the user experience. That's kind of the IDEO's design thinking process. And for each of these stages, we'll probably have similar things that are going on. One that's very, very, very similar is Stanford's design school design thinking process. So they have, again, a very similar one, except they also have assess at the end. So this is also supposed to be a user-centric approach, and it's supposed to foster more creativity and collaboration. So we can kind of go over it very, very briefly with whatever time we have left. So, you know, we have interviews, uncovering emotions, seeking stories, again, similar to last time, reframing, inferring insights, brainstorming, building on ideas. So again, these are all very similar to each other, and it just shows that like you can have a million different like design protocols, but the important thing is that you're like kind of following this general flow of like the design process. They actually split up what we would think of as the last stage in the double diamond approach into like test and assess. So the difference between test, we have actually testing with customers and refining the solution. So at this point, you're still actually changing stuff, and you're able to fail, you're able to restart and go back to maybe the prototyping phase. And then assessing is kind of a last step to close off the design project, which I think is a pretty good way to, like, if you're ending a project or ending something permanently, then assessing, I think, is a very important thing. What did you learn? What are some things? What about next time we need to create something new? Then I also want to talk about the lean startup model, which is, some would say this is the most popular one specifically for startups. So if you're thinking about making a startup in the future, this is probably going to be a very useful video for you. Yeah, so we'll talk about this model as well.
Welcome to Get Lean in 5 minutes. It's basically like 6-minute abs, except it's leaner, it's faster, and it's about product development and not ab development. The Lean Startup Framework and being lean is the de facto framework that startups today use to test and grow their startup businesses. So the term lean as you know it comes from this book and is written by a man named Eric Ries. The name actually comes from lean manufacturing, something that Toyota did. Basically meant that they tried to make a very simplified process of manufacturing. The lean startup version obviously is for startups. Now, what is the book all about? It's about a framework and a way of thinking that can mitigate your risks going forward as you pursue your startup and increase the likelihood of finding an idea or a feature or a product that sticks. Now, the first thing that Lean wants you to know is that when you go out there and launch your business idea, you're launching into 100% unknown, absolute uncertainty. Now you might think, well, I have talked to my mom about this idea and she said it was great. Also, my best friend said it was great, and I read Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. Now this is where the vast majority of people are wrong, and it's the first lesson we learned from Lean. In order to know whether or not your idea is any good, you have to get out there and test it. Get out of the building, as they call it. If you're just sitting here right now thinking about your idea in your head, it's just that, it's just your head. Even if you think you know your customers, know your market, and you know how they're gonna respond, you actually don't. You do not know for a fact. When we're in the shower, when we're thinking about our idea, boy, does it sound brilliant. But the reality is that most of our ideas are actually terrible. What the great Eric Ries is actually trying to say is that the only way an idea can improve and gain legs is by achieving what we call validated learning. Validated learning is learning that we know is true because we've tested it, whereas learning itself, we don't know if it's true because it's not tested. You can research all day long reading primary and secondary reports, but how do you know for 100% fact whether or not someone in a buying type situation is going to buy what you're going to try to sell? Now, the best way of getting that validated learning that we so crave in the Lean Startup Framework is by building MVP experiments, which are basically miniature versions of your first product that we push out rapidly with a minimum amount of time and effort just to see how customers react. Why is it that we have to do it quickly? Well, because when you run an MVP experiment, there's really only one of two things that can happen. One, your idea is validated and you get some really great information about how to improve it, or two, it just straight up fails and you find out that no, people are not interested in your product, at least in this current version. So if you spend a month making an MVP, you push it out there and you find out that nobody actually wants what you're trying to sell, it took you a month to figure that out. That's one data point, basically. But if you took a week to make an MVP, you could have tested 4 different ideas within the same time frame that it took you to test that first one. More tests means more data, which means more validated learning. Now, because it's only that binary outcome, you either succeed or you fail, you might as well fail as quickly as you can, because any time spent up until that point that wasn't absolutely necessary was entirely a waste of time. Hence why we call it lean. We cut out everything that is not necessary in order to figure out whether or not our idea is any good. It's a way of minimizing the effort, resources, and time it takes to figure out whether or not your product should even be built in the first place. And the motto is, and I love this, stop building things that people do not want. For those of you out there that knew lean, well, that was a refresher. And if you didn't know lean, look at how much time I just saved you.
All right, go forth and be lean. That's a good video. And yeah, again, everything he said, very important. He talked about the MVP and kind of even more micro sense than generally what you think of it as, where you kind of just push out very small features right away really quickly, and kind of shrinks down the development process and the time frame, which is good, especially if you're in a crunch or you have the ability to actually push out these small features. It can be very hard to be lean if your actual product is ginormous. So there are different times and different places for everything, but this is why this is the startup method, because generally with the startups is it's not like the most involved or complicated project. You have a few big things that your thing's trying to do, and if you're trying to get lean, then you can prototype really quickly and easily. So good method for anybody out there to know. You can see the connections between lean and DD or any of these other methods.
Welcome to Get Lean in
And
5.
we're done with that. All right. We have like a couple more. But again, like all these are very similar. I'm just trying to show you that like there's like a lot of different ways that you can approach any sort of these things. And if any of them speak out to you, you should look at them. But we have the human-centered design. So again, here, create, deliver, deep user research and iterative solution development, right? I mean, I know we don't have a lot of time left to go through most of these, but I just think it's interesting to see like what different people have came up with and tried to create a solid process for what design development and business thinking is. We have like Design Sprint by Google Ventures. You know, Google does a pretty good job generally with when you're talking about designing things. So it'd be very good to look at what they're doing. We also have Six Sigma DMAC. So define, measure, analyze, improve, control. Again, you could rephrase this as the double diamond approach or lean or any of these sort of things when you actually read the sort of ideas that go into it. But yeah, that's generally when we're talking about design thinking, that's kind of what we're looking at. It's a lot of testing, a lot of trial and error, and then just a lot of kind of just like research working together. There's a lot of different aspects to go into design research, but hopefully this kind of gives some clarification, some guidance if anybody's trying to do this sort of thing. So I guess we're kind of out of time here. So if anybody has any questions, then that'll be it. Going once, going twice. Yeah, if anybody has questions that they have afterwards, again, you can email me, george.holm@yale.edu. You can like look me up on LinkedIn or whatever. But thank you so much. I had a lot of fun creating this presentation, so hope to see some of y'all again sometime. But yeah, that's the project.
Okay, so anybody has any questions, so you can reach out to George. He has also shared his email ID. Plus, you want to ask any other questions now, you can please go ahead. Otherwise, we'll just end the session.
Thank you.
Great. Great. Bye, George. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for this session. Bye-bye.